Boxing Truth here. I wanted to do this topic about Triple G, and I'm hearing a lot of videos and people talking on the YTBCs about Triple G's promotional situation. And the argument is, well, a lot of people are saying in the YTBC is that Golovkin needs to fire Tom Loeffler. He needs to get away from him and sign with somebody else, or really they're pushing for him to join the PBC. And when I hear that statement, I find it very laughable. I laugh my ass off when I hear people say that, because it tells me that these guys just don't know shit about Golovkin's career. They haven't done research on his career, and read about the bullshit Golovkin had to go through to get where he's at right now, to the point that where he's gotten at. It wasn't all It wasn't all recognition and glory Golovkin's been receiving from a lot of fans throughout his career. He had a rough spot in his career when he signed with Universal, because when he ended his amateur career in 2005, he signed with his German promotional company called Universal, and Universal is the reason why Golovkin took a long time to be known by American boxing fans. Universal put his career on hold. They did nothing with his career. They didn't direct him or push him to be a big star or international star. Golovkin's dream has always been to sell out big venues and to become an international star, and Universal brought nothing to the table to accomplish that. They stalled his career. They matched him with a bunch of nobodies, even though they knew that he would dispatch them so easily, and he couldn't get any big fights because Universal was holding him back. When he tried to get fights with Felix Sturm and Sebastian Zibik, he couldn't get those fights because Universal wouldn't let Golovkin fight those guys, because those guys were the ticket sellers in Germany. They were the star fighters in Germany, and Golovkin couldn't get those fights because of politics. So he was pretty much put on hold, taking fights that weren't going to get him anywhere. Couldn't get any title shots because Universal wouldn't make those fights for him against Sturm and Zibik. And Universal had no plan to bring his career forward, and they prevented him a title shot for as long as they could. And so Golovkin had no choice but to get out of his contract with Universal, and it took some doing. He had to put his career on hold. He had to sit on the shelf for a while until he ran his contract with Universal out. But that was his mistake. He signed with Universal. They kept him solely in Germany and didn't give him the fights that he needed to propel him to another level. So he got out of the contract at Universal, and he signed with K2 back in 2010. And in a little less than 2 years, K2 and Tom Loeffler, they were able to bring him over to America, and the rest is history. Look what they've done for Golovkin ever since. He went from being an unknown commodity in Germany to now one of the most recognizable names in boxing. He's not at that big pay-per-view level yet, like a Canelo Alvarez or a Manny Pacquiao, but he's one of the handful of ticket sellers in all of boxing. This guy is one of the very few fighters in America in boxing that can sell out venues like Madison Square Garden. And he did that with the direction of Tom Loeffler and K2. Tom Loeffler has done his job with Golovkin. He got him fights on HBO. HBO is a great hype machine. They're the network that most fighters turn to in order to become pay-per-view stars. HBO has just look at their track record. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be affiliated with HBO? They know how to build stars. They know how to promote fighters. They have the promotional tools and backing to really hype these fighters' names up. It's just the way it is. No other network has been able to establish and build stars like HBO has. PBC is still in its infancy stages. They haven't proven anything yet. All they've done is spend a lot of money and accomplish very little. That's all they've done. And people want him to join the PBC based on what? Where does that come from? Tom Loeffler has been doing his job. He's slowly but surely built Gennady Golovkin's name to another level. This guy went from selling out small venues like the theater in Madison Square Garden to selling out big venues like the StubHub, the Forum, out west, and also Madison Square Garden, his last fight. On the East Coast, this guy can sell out big venues on the West Coast and on the East Coast. Not many fighters in boxing can do that. Only a handful of fighters in boxing can do that. And he's also, his market value has been rising, and because of his market value rising, his paydays have been increasing. He went from getting $750,000 against Daniel Geale to a base pay of $900,000 against Marco Antonio Rubio. Got over a $1.5 million to beat up on Willie Monroe when he fought at the Forum. And then finally he got his biggest payday on pay-per-view against David Lemieux. He got $2 million. That fight didn't belong on pay-per-view, but in order for that fight to be made, they had to pay Lemieux a handsome fee. They had to pay him a purse of $1.5 million. If they didn't pay him that, Lemieux wasn't going to fight him. He wanted to get paid to get his ass whooped. And that's what they did. They put it on pay-per-view. They were hoping for 200,000 buys. They did 150. They broke even. They were able to sell out the Garden, get a solid gate number, and they were able to pay everybody, and everybody made a little money. And that's how it went down. So why should Golovkin lead Tom Loeffler when Loeffler's been getting his name out there in America? His fan base is growing steadily. His name is rising. People talk about him all the time. He's on commercials. He's on, he's constantly being talked about in boxing. And also, he's on the horizon of getting to that level he wants to be at, the big pay-per-view level. But he needs that fight with Canelo. And that's the argument of what people say about Golovkin. Like, he should leave Loeffler because he's not getting them the big fights. Look, Loeffler can't force these guys to fight him. He can't. He can only negotiate with them, offer them a purse. They don't take it. They don't take it. They don't want the fight. It is what it is. It's just like that. You can't force guys to fight. And that's what he always says. Every time there's a negotiation for a Triple G fight, it's the same shit every time. Guys don't want to fight him. They want more money. They're having trouble finding a good opponent. It's just the way it is. Because, Golovkin, if you're going to fight Golovkin, fighters want to get paid. And they also know that you don't just lose to Golovkin. You're going to get your ass whooped if you lose to him. He could ruin your career. It's a damaging loss. This is not like fighting Floyd Mayweather where he out-touches you and you don't even get a scratch on your face after 12 rounds of fighting him. You're gonna feel some damage. You're gonna feel some power, and you most likely gonna get your ass whooped fighting Golovkin. He don't just beat you. He embarrasses you. He knocks you the fuck out. So it's a different type of fight when you fight Golovkin. It's an explosive, damaging fight potentially if you fight him. So that's why a lot of fighters are not really willing to fight Golovkin right now for two reasons. One, he can really kick your ass. Two, he's not at that big pay-per-view level yet. If he was at the level of Canelo, I'm sure a lot of people would be lining up to fight him, but he's not. However, in order for Golovkin to get to that level, he needs the Canelo fight to get him to that stratosphere, to get him to that type of level. That's how it works in boxing. You don't just become the big star in the sport. You have to fight somebody or beat somebody to get to a higher level. How you think Mayweather Pacquiao got to that level? They fought Oscar De La Hoya. Without the Oscar fight, they wouldn't be at that level. That's just the way it is. Canelo fought Mayweather. He lost, but it built his shit up. It did. He's been on pay-per-view ever since that fight. Most of the times, besides the Kirkland fight. And now he's considered the cash cow because Pacquiao's on his way out. So, why the hell is Golovkin going to go to PBC when there's no fighter on that side that can get him to that type of level? What fighter can get him to that level? Danny Jacobs is not a pay-per-view star. He can't even sell out the Barclays Center. He can't even sell out the Barclays Center with a guy from New York and Peter Quillen. How is he going to get him to that level? Erizlandi Lara brings nothing to the table. Brings no money, brings no fan base. How is beating Lara going to get him to that level? It's not. Quillen, not going to get him to that level. Who the hell is going to fight on PBC to get on pay-per-view and become a huge major star in boxing? Canelo is the only fight that can get him to that level. He needs that fight, and Loeffler and Gennadi's team are trying everything they can to make that fight happen. But they can't force Canelo to fight him. Just not going to work that way. And there's an argument. They say, "Oh, Loeffler should have demanded it. Have the WBC strip Canelo." Well, this is politics we're talking about here. It's not that simple. For one, Canelo is the cash cow of the sport. He generates a lot of money. The WBC are an organization that they're about the money. They're about making money. Just look at their rankings. It's all subjective. But most of the guys they have in the top 2 or 3 are money guys that can generate money, big sanctioning fees. It's just the way boxing is, especially for the WBC. It's all about, they follow the money. Just like promoters, they follow the money. The WBC is the same thing. They follow the money. But what Loeffler did do was get something in writing from the WBC. WBC already announced this to the world. That once they get rid of their interim fights, they will negotiate. And if they can't come with a deal, then according to the WBC, they will strip Canelo, and Golovkin will be elevated to the full WBC champion. That's the best they could do for Golovkin. They can't force Canelo to fight him. So if Canelo doesn't fight him next, most likely he will be stripped. And if Canelo decides to just give up the belt, how does that make Golovkin look bad? How does that make him look bad? He wants to fight. But he's the mandatory contender. He has some obligation. He has some say about what weight the fight will be at. Now, they could come to a compromise about maybe 158, 158 and a half. But Golovkin don't have to fight him at 155. He don't. He's a mandatory contender. He doesn't have to fight him at 155. But they could compromise a little just to get the fight to make the fight happen. But that's a long way away. And that's all Golovkin's team can do. They can assure him that no matter what, he will be the full WBC champion after the interim fights of both Canelo Alvarez and Triple G. And I just don't understand that argument that Golovkin should go to PBC when the only fight out there that can get Golovkin to that level is a Canelo Alvarez fight. And he can't get that fight if he goes to the PBC, can he? What the hell is he going to do at PBC? I mean, what fighter in PBC can sell out venues, big venues in the West Coast and on the East Coast? Name me one fighter. Deontay Wilder can't do it. He couldn't sell out the Barclays Center his last fight. A capacity crowd showed up, but it was mostly Offer Spilka fans that showed up. A good Polish community came to support that fight. Danny Jacobs can't sell out the Barclays Center. Peter Quillen can't sell it out. I mean, if he was to fight, Triple G was to fight Jacobs, it'd be a big fight, but nowhere near as big as a Canelo fight. So that's how it is. Golovkin's about big opportunities right now, but you can't force guys to fight. And this mandatory defense against Dominic Wade, he's all about the belts. He wants to keep the belts. I wish he had an attitude of Tyson Fury and be all about big fights, but he wants to be all about the belts and big fights too. That's fine, but I believe he should just have more of an attitude over the big fights. But if nobody wants to fight him, then what's he gonna do? You can't force guys to fight him. He has to fight whoever's out there. Dominic Wade took the fight. Props to him. He has balls to get in the ring. There's no excuses. It was a relatively easy negotiation. Give him credit for taking this fight without no blockage or obstacles in making the fight happen. And that's the way it should be. So I don't get where that argument is coming from. I mean, Golovkin has to keep doing what he's doing. He has to find the best available guys out there, and that's what he's trying to do. That's the best they can do. There's only one big money fight, a big pay-per-view fight that can get him to the level that he wants, and that's Canelo. That's the fight he's concerned about. That's the fight he wants. That's the fight that he knows that's going to get him to that level, because there's no other fight out there that can bring him to that level. And another thing, if he fights Hopkins, yeah, I don't like the fight either. I don't like the fight. But guess what? It's a money fight. It's going to generate money. It's going to bring viewership. Because casual fans, they're all about names. It's not about who the best fighters are on the underground. People that you don't see often. Casual fans, they know names. Bernard Hopkins is a name. So that's why Loeffler and Triple G are considering that fight, but they will only consider it if they can't get Canelo in the ring, or if they can't get Billy Joe Sanders in the ring, or if they can't get Chris Eubank Jr. in the ring. Then they will turn to Bernard Hopkins, because Hopkins, even though he's 51 years old, is a name. He's a legend. He brings something to the table. He has a fan base. That fight will do big numbers still do business. That's why they're considering that fight. This is a business. This is not about, fighting unknown guys who are skillful and can beat you. This is prize fighting. It's about fighting the big money fights, the biggest fights out there that can be made, that can fill your bank account. That's what it's about. I mean, this is what Paul Malignaggi said. This is prize fighting. Prize fighting. So that's why that fight is being considered, because it's a money fight. And that's the only reason why that fight's being considered. And if it happens, it happens. But that fight's only going to happen if other guys don't step up to the plate. That's all I have to say about the situation. And Triple G, he's in fine hands with Tom Loeffler. He made a mistake signing with Universal, but that's happened to many fighters. Billy Dibb signed with 50 Cent. Yuriorkis Gamboa signed with 50 Cent. Andre Jarrell left Heyman like an idiot and signed with 50 Cent, but was able to get out of that contract. There's benefits to signing with Heyman, but only if you're a fighter that can't put asses in the seats and you have no market value. If you have market value and people know who you are and people come to see you fight, you don't need Al Heyman. You don't. But if you don't have those two things, you might as well sign with Heyman, because he'll give you the money to fight soft touches. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.